Hello from London, and it's Quick Tip Tuesday, and today the latest in the series of tips on working one-to-one with a teacher online. First of all, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Gareth Popkins. Here we talk about language learning from many angles. We look at methods, we've got the tips, I've got interviews with inspiring language learners. I do vlogging from language learner events and tell you about my own language learning projects. If you haven't yet subscribed for the vibe, please do. And if you follow the link underneath this video, then you can get my free webinar language learning method training. In this series so far then, we've looked at objective and subjective factors that you need to bear in mind when you're choosing a teacher to work with online. I'm thinking about Skype lessons one-to-one, but it could also be a physical lesson with a teacher in a classroom or a teacher who comes to your house for that matter. After we'd looked at choosing the teacher, we talked about goal setting for working with a teacher, and also the importance of having realistic expectations of what you can and cannot expect from a teacher. Today, I want to look at the ways teachers can help at the different stages in your language learning journey, and when it makes most sense to engage a teacher, when you're a beginner, an intermediate learner, or an advanced student. Now, there are pros and cons, I think, to bringing a teacher in at each stage. So let's start with the beginning stages. On the plus side, I think, particularly if you don't know anybody who speaks the language, then having someone to talk to practice the language with from the very beginning, even on the other side of a screen, is great for making the language real. It helps with accent too. You don't want bad habits to kick in the early stages. Even if you're working with audio material, getting some good corrective feedback on your accent at an early stage makes a lot of sense, I think. A teacher can also help you with the basic initial phrases that you need in the language. Not only the stock things, greetings and so on, but talking a bit about yourself, the sort of questions you're going to have to field. You know, what's your job? Why are you learning your language? Talking about your family, that sort of thing. And also learning up some of those what I call, toolkit phrases that can help you learn more about the language through the language. So things like, could you repeat that please? Or what is the German for X? What is Y in Japanese? Could you speak more slowly? That sort of thing. A teacher can help you work up these phrases and help you get interaction using the language. Now, I've taken lessons often and early when I've been doing my mini project in Indonesian and Icelandic, and my serious long-term project as a Basque learner. I'm intermediate now, but from the beginning stages I was working with a teacher. But with my current project, Japanese, I'm not actually bringing in a teacher. And I've been learning for several months. That's because there are some downsides to working with a teacher early on as well. First of all, it can be really frustrating because you can't say very much yet. And that's why I tend to limit sessions in the early stages to 30 minutes if I can find a teacher who offers 30-minute sessions. Many of them require you to do at least 45 minutes or an hour. You might, however, be quite happy just to, for example, use Google Translate, in the corner of the screen in the early stages, and to muddle through somehow talking to a teacher that way. I think a lot depends on your personality. Are you the sort of extrovert who craves contact and interaction from the early stages, or a more cautious introvert who would prefer to do preparatory study early on before you kick in? You're going to be doing a sort of cost-benefit analysis. That's what I thought about with my Japanese this time. Is it really optimal for me to spend the time and the money in the early stages on a teacher, or is it better to use the time working on the patterns myself, getting the first 1,000, 2,000 words and phrases learnt before I kick in with a teacher? So there are pros and cons to bringing in a teacher at the early stages. Once you get into intermediate, I think that's almost the golden period for working a lot with a teacher. It's the sweet spot, if you like. So at this stage, you can already do things in the language. It makes sense to move up to a 45-minute slot or an hour slot if you want to. There's still quite a lot to learn, so the guidance and the motivation you can get from a teacher makes sense. It's really important to keep going at this stage because you're a long way in. And it's terribly sad if you give up at this stage because you've invested so much effort already, but it's quite easy to because it's still a pretty steep learning curve. So having the support of a teacher and, a safe, rather artificial context in which to practice still makes a lot of sense at this stage. So I think it's a no-brainer at the intermediate stage to work as often as you can with a teacher, and 3 sessions a week if you can afford it and can timetable it seem to make to me a lot of sense. You know, it also helps with motivation. If you've booked your sessions in advance, you're sort of boxed in. Even if you don't feel like it, you've got to go into that lesson, and often you find once you get starting, you know, appetite comes with eating. So intermediate level, yeah, working one-to-one with a teacher to me seems to be great. Now, what about at the advanced stage? By this stage, you can just use the language in social contexts, in a work context perhaps. Do you really need a teacher? At this level, it might make more sense than ever just to use italki have community tutors who are not necessarily qualified teachers, or to find an exchange partner. But there are reasons why a teacher who is qualified, or somebody who really understands about teaching and about your target language still makes sense at this stage. That's because, you know, they may be able to explain more clearly to you fossilised errors that you might have as an advanced learner. They can help you with the fine-tuning of your language. And if you want to take your game apart, as it were, to sort out some of the fossilised errors, go back to some basics, they can help you do that as well. Of course, for teachers, it can be very desirable to teach advanced students. You're quite a commodity in a sense because there are far fewer of them, and generally it's a different experience for teachers. They need to do often less preparation because they can just talk to you about a range of subjects, and you can do that with an exchange partner too. Because so much at the advanced level, aside from remedial work if you like, and getting rid of fossilised mistakes, is about expanding the range of topics that you can talk about. One final point about working with teachers at any level: if you're going to use them to prepare for a language exam, make sure that the teacher is conversant with that exam, or find out yourself all about it. When I was working for my advanced Russian and German exams, the teachers I was working with hadn't taught students necessarily in the past who were doing those exams, particularly on the Russian side, and so I had to really take the initiative and find out about the requirements of the exam. But that brings me back to the previous video on realistic expectations. You have to take responsibility and be prepared to drive what is going on in the lessons, particularly I think maybe at the advanced stage. So those are my thoughts on the pros and cons and when it makes sense in the different stages of language learning to bring a teacher on board. Do you agree with this? What's your view? Have you been using teachers at the advanced level, at the intermediate level, or as a beginner? And do you think it made sense to bring the teacher in when you did? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you're watching this video as it goes out on Tuesday the 2nd of July, then the next video up on Thursday will be the next instalment from the Polyglot Gathering, day 3. So look out for that vlog from Bratislava. Don't forget to subscribe for the vibe, throw me a thumbs up, tickle that bell, and share your family. See you next time.